So I've got this app on my screen that I built with Lovable and plugged into n8n. It's a Facebook ad generator. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this description of this Ridge wallet. We're just going to plug it into our app over here. We're going to select a goal for traffic. We're going to select a style for clean. And what's going to happen when I hit generate ad is that Lovable is going to call a webhook inside of n8n on the back end. So here's the n8n workflow that's plugged into Lovable. Now, what this is doing is it's using an AI agent to come up with the text for the ad as well as the image prompt. And then we're using the replicate API to come up with the image for our ad. And what's going to happen when this finishes up is it's going to send it back to us inside of Lovable. All right, so we can see the automation finished up. Now let's hop back into Lovable. And boom, look what we've got. We've got a primary text field, we've got a headline, we've got a description, and we've got an image for our ad. So in this video, I want to walk you through how you can use Lovable to build a front end for your own app and then have all of the back end done inside of n8n. So again, in this video, I want to talk about the benefits of building a front end on top of our n8n workflows. So we love building inside of n8n. We love creating AI agents. We love creating all these awesome workflows. But where I see a real value add, if you're selling these to customers, if you're an agency, if you're providing these for clients, is to add a front end, a clean looking front end that your client can interact with without really having to touch n8n at all. So I do think there's a big opportunity here to learn some of these no-code app builders. And again, we're going to look at Lovable today. There's several others. Learning how to create these simple front-end apps like you see on my screen that talk to n8n. So we've got Lovable on the front end where the user can interact and enter their data. And we've got n8n on the back end doing all of the hard work and tying these two together to really create these custom apps. So here's a little illustration that I had ChatGPT mock up. It's not perfect, but I think it tells the story. All right. So just a preview of what we're building here. So again, we're going to build a Facebook ad builder, the front end of which will be on Lovable. So your clients or your team can just interact with this nice interface. And then what's going to happen is that that information is going to be sent over to n8n with a webhook. And that webhook is going to kick off the automation. And we're going to be doing a couple of things inside of n8n, like using an AI agent to generate some ad copy. We're going to be using the replicate API to generate the image that you saw. And then we're going to kind of package up all of those ad elements and send it back to the user inside of Lovable. So again, the idea is the end user does not even have to go into n8n at all. They enter their input in Lovable. n8n does all of the hard work in the background. And then what the user gets back as the output comes through Lovable itself. So we've got our ad text and we've got our ad image. So all of this happens without the user even going into n8n. So just a level set, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Lovable, but if you're not, it's basically a way to create a custom app just using natural language. So this is what I'm going to be using in this video. There are several other AI app builders like Replit and Bolt. I'm just going to be using Lovable because I'm most comfortable with it. This is definitely not a sponsored video. We're going to be able to kind of iterate back and forth in natural language with Lovable to help build out the front end of our app. And then we're going to make this a live build, but I just want to show you the n8n automation and what we're doing here. So this is a webhook. Okay, so this is going to receive a request from Lovable. So whatever the user enters in these fields, and I'm going to try to recreate this as closely as possible. Since we're doing a live build, it's going to come out somewhat differently. But the user enters all of their info here. And when they click on generate ad, that's going to trigger the webhook in n8n. And we're going to send over that information that the user entered to this AI agent. And this AI agent has a couple of responsibilities. Namely, it's going to come up with that text, that headline, and that image prompt. And what we're going to do next is send that image prompt over to the replicate API. We're going to be using Flux to generate an image for the ad. Then we're just going to wait for that image to finish. We're going to kind of combine all of the fields together. And then we're going to send the response of the webhook back to Lovable, and that's how it's able to give the results to us on the same page. All right, so let's get started. We're actually going to start this build inside of n8n for one very important reason, and we need a webhook URL that we can provide to Lovable. All right, so for our first step, let's search for webhook, right? So this is going to be our trigger. Lovable is going to send that data to our webhook, all right? And so what we're going to do is eventually we're going to grab this test URL and send it to Lovable because it's going to need that in order to build out the app. So that's step number one here. And just real quick before we go even further, I'm going to have all of the templates and all of the prompts for this build entirely for free inside of my school community. So there's a link below this video to join. There's over 1,500 members in here. And all you do to grab the templates is you go into the classroom, you find the video, and then you'll see the associated YouTube video, and you download that template and just import it into n8n. So again, if you want the template and all of the prompts for this build out, be sure to check out the free community linked below. All right, so let's get into Lovable. Again, this is going to be a live build, so some things are going to go off the rails. It's not going to look exactly like the finished product that I showed before, but I think it'll be useful to show the back and forth with Lovable. Now, what I like to do is I'm going to just show you my prompt first, and then I'll talk through it. Now, I got plenty of help with this with ChatGPT. So the first thing I did is I went into ChatGPT, and I gave it an idea of what I wanted, right? A clean, simple app where a user can kind of define some parameters for generating Facebook ads. And then I want the images to be created inside of Replicate. And then I want the ad copy in the image sent back to the user in Lovable. And then I told it that we're going to be using n8n for the back-end automation. So let's walk through the prompt that I had used initially. So create a page called Ad Kit Mini, and I might change page to Simple Web App. Again, this initial prompt is from ChatGPT. And then after going back and forth with ChatGPT, we came on a text area. And so instead of product URL, although we'll talk about that later on how we can maybe build on this app itself and make it better, we're just going to use a text area that says, let's call it product description. And then for my demo, I had two drop downs here, right? What is the campaign goal since these were Facebook ads, traffic, conversions, or retargeting? And then we had another drop down here for the creative style. Should it be clean, user generated, or a meme? And then finally a button that says generate kit, which is going to actually generate the output. Then we're going to say on click, post the JSON to webhook URL and wait. Now this is where you need that webhook and why we set it up first inside of n8n. So going back to our build here, if we open up this webhook, again, we'll do the test URL right now. I'm just going to copy this to my clipboard. I'm going to go back to Lovable, and I'm going to remove this placeholder and actually give this webhook to Lovable. So Lovable will use this webhook when it's building the app. And then it says, when the JSON response arrives, show 3 columns, primary text, headline, description, and then under each column, show the corresponding image thumbnail. And we can tweak that because that's not actually very clear. So under the columns, show the corresponding image thumbnail. Keep styling minimal, mobile responsive. So again, that's the prompt that ChatGPT and I came up with. If you want, for the UI, if you have an example in mind, you can send a screenshot and attach it to Lovable, and it will try to mimic that. But to just get started, let's send this off and see what happens. All right, so I'm going to send that off to Lovable, and it's going to get to work behind the scenes building out the first iteration of this web app. So it might take a few seconds or a few minutes. I'll pause and come back when we have our first version. All right, so it came back with a near duplicate of what I built before. All right, it's a little bit different in terms of the layout, but it looks very similar, right? So we've got our product description, we've got our campaign goal, and these drop downs are working. We got our creative style, and then we've got the generate kit button. So the next thing that I'm going to want to do is see if the webhook functionality itself works. So what I'm going to do is go back to Ridge. And again, this is just an example of an e-commerce store, and this is the wallet here. So I'm going to just grab this description. I'm going to go back into Lovable. I'm just going to paste this in, and I'm just going to select, it doesn't really matter for these drop downs, because again, right now what we want to do is test the functionality of the webhook. I'll change that to clean. And what you need to do before you hit generate kit, and I constantly make this error, is you actually need to go into n8n, and if you click on execute workflow, it's going to say, hey, we're waiting for you to call the test URL. So that's when you go back into Lovable, and I'm going to click on generate kit. Now this may error out, which is fine, but what I want is for it to actually call the URL. Now it does not look like it's calling the URL because we would see a success sign. So what I can do is just go back into Lovable and say, I tested out the submit button with the webhook from n8n, but it doesn't seem to be calling the actual webhook. And I can go back in, and let me just hit stop here. Let me go back to n8n, make sure I've got the right URL, and I'm just going to paste the URL back in here and send that off. All right, so first thing that I forgot to change is the request. So right now we have this as a GET request, but we don't want that. We want to change this to a post request, because Lovable is going to send the user's data over to n8n. We need the post request, whereas a GET request is only for fetching data. So I've changed this to post. I'm going to go back into Lovable, and I'm going to just clarify. No, you are correct. We should be using a post request. I've made the change inside of n8n. Please make the change back to using a post request. So you can see here that Lovable caught my mistake. So we know that Lovable was hooked in to n8n. I just had it configured correctly. So it's kind of like having a coding partner on the side who's able to catch some of your mistakes. All right, so it's saying, let me change it back using a post request as originally intended. All right, so the webhook has been changed back to a post request. So I can come back into n8n. Let me just save this. I'm going to click execute workflow, and it's going to say it's waiting for the test to come in. So I'm just going to go back to Lovable, click on generate kit again, and we can see, at least on the front end, it says that it's been generated, but really it's been submitted. Now, when we go into n8n, this is a good sign that we can see the green success mark here. So let me open up my webhook, and now when I go into the JSON, I can see that we are sending a product description, the campaign goal, and the creative style. So this is perfect. The information from Lovable is making its way into n8n, and so now we can take all of this information here and build out our automation. All right, so what's next? This is looking at the completed flow. So what we want to do is send that webhook information into an AI agent, because our AI agent is going to help generate what we want to see when we get it back, right? So again, this is for Facebook ads. We want to see the primary text, we want to see the headline, we want to see the description, and we want to get the image back. So we need to add an AI agent to prompt it to come up with that output. So going back into n8n, let's add an AI agent here by clicking on AI and then AI agent. Now I'm going to come out of this quick. First, to pick my chat model. So you can use whatever chat model you want. I'm going to use OpenAI 4.0 Mini. And now we can go back into the AI agent, and we're going to have to change a couple of things in here. So the first thing that we're going to want to change is we want a specific output format, meaning when OpenAI comes up with the response, we want it to be in JSON so we can send it back through the webhook to Lovable. So I'm going to tick that box on, and we can actually wait until the end to do that. But I'm going to tick that box on for right now. Next thing that I'm going to do is source for prompt. So how are we going to prompt our agent? It's not going to be through a chat because we're not using a chat. So we want to change that to define below. And so for this user message, what we really want to do here is provide the AI with the context of what the user submitted. So that'll make sense in a second. So I'm going to click into expression. I'm going to open this up, and I'm just going to paste in something. We'll have to change these fields here because it's just named differently than what I was using before. But what we're doing up front is, again, we're providing the information that the user submitted when they sent that information through Lovable, which is the product information, the campaign goal, and the creative style. So I want to pass this information over to my AI agent. So we can come into the webhook output over here, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and you can see here. So for the product info, we have this as product description, but I can just drag that in right after that, and you can see it populate on the right-hand side here. The campaign goal, I can drag that in as well, and then the creative style, I can drag that in as well. So this is the information that's going to be passed to our AI agent as context. All right, next we need to add a system prompt, which is basically rules for the agent to follow. So I'm going to click add option, system message here. I'm just going to hit expression so I can open this up. And again, I'm going to paste in my prompt. So I'm saying you are a direct response copywriter for Facebook ads. Produce one set of assets, concise and conversion focused. Return valid JSON only exactly in this shape. Okay, so I'm asking it to output text, headline, description, and an image prompt based on the information that I'm feeding it in the user message. So the AI is going to take this as the system prompt, right? The rules that it has to follow. Then it's going to take the system message, which is the context, and it's going to put these two together to come up with an output. Now we're almost done here, but you remember that we selected a output parser here. And so what I need to do is click on this plus button, click on structured output parser, and this is going to kind of force the AI agent to respond in this JSON format so we can pass it through the rest of the automation and pass it back to the webhook to get back into Lovable. So we're kind of, again, forcing the agent to respond in a very specific way instead of just responding like in a chat. So what I did is I selected structured output parser, and then in the JSON example, I can delete this, and I'm going to paste in what ChatGPT gave me, right? So we're trying to force it to respond exactly in this structure with the text, the headline, the description, and the image prompt, along with some examples. Again, this template will be inside of my community, so you can grab it. So I can check out of here, and now we should be good on the AI agent front. So we can test our AI agent to make sure that it's grabbing the right info from the webhook and outputting what we want. So let's just click back into our agent. Let's click on execute step and see what we get here for the output. All right, so you can see we've got some nice JSON here. We've got the text, we've got the headline, we've got the description, and we have an image prompt. All right, so this is working perfectly. All right, next we want to have the images created for our ads. And no, we're not going to use the ChatGPT image generator, though you could. For this one, I am going to be using Flux, which is a really good image model. And to do that, we're going to run this through Replicate, which is basically a place that has a bunch of different models in one spot. So again, if you want to use OpenAI, you can do that. I'm going to use Replicate for this video. So here's inside my Replicate account, and this was a new account. I think I've got 10 generations in here, and you can see I spent $1. Okay, so each of these images that I generated was only 10 cents. But what you can do inside of Replicate in this search bar is just search for Playground, okay, Playground Beta. And what you can do up here is choose your model. So what I'm using for this video, you could literally use whatever model you want, again, or you could just use OpenAI. But just to show you step by step, I'm using Flux Context Max. All right, so what you can do in the playground is you can play around, right? So if we go back to n8n, and inside of our AI agent, we've got a prompt here if we want to just test this out, right? So I'm just going to grab this prompt, go back to the playground. I'm going to enter it over here, and I'm going to leave all of these other settings as is, and I'm just going to click on Run Model, and what we should see happen is a clean, modern wallet. All right, so that's a pretty good image. Again, I think it's up there with ChatGPT, but this is how you can test, number one, but just as important, we are going to be able to grab the curl command from the logs here, right? So if I scroll down and click on HTTP, we're going to get this nice curl command that we're going to be able to plug into n8n in the next step. All right, so back in n8n, what we're going to do is add an HTTP request node and paste in that curl command. So again, the idea is we're going to send the prompt from the AI agent to replicate in order to generate the image. So let's add an HTTP request node. And what we can do, and n8n makes this easy. Again, going back to replicate, I'm in the playground, and that's after I tested the image here. So I'm in HTTP here. And what I can do is click on copy, go back into n8n, and then click on import curl, and just paste that in, and click on import. And what it's going to do is it's going to set up the authentication, it's going to set up the headers, it's going to set up the body. So you can see, and the URL. So it's giving us the post method, it's giving us the URL of where we need to send this to. And now for headers, what you do need to pay attention to here is the authorization. So this is where we're going to send our API token. And this right here, including the $, is the placeholder where you want to paste in your API key. So back inside of replicate, what you can do in your dropdown at the top left here is just go to API tokens, and when you click into that, you're going to get your API key. I'm not going to expose mine right now, but you're going to go back into n8n and you're going to paste your API key right here after the word token, okay? So the headers are now set up. Let's go down to the body. Again, it sets all of this up for us, but we need to change one important thing, and of course, that is the prompt. So in this JSON down here, I'm going to click into expression. Then I'm going to open this up so I can see it a little more. And so what it's doing here, and you can change this if you want. You can play around with the aspect ratio and the output format and the safety tolerance if you want. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to leave all that as is. But what I do want to change, of course, is the prompt. So this is a placeholder prompt right now, but we want to pass in a variable, right? So whatever the user submits needs to come in. So we want to remove the hard-coded prompt. So everything between the beginning quotation and the ending quotation, I'm going to delete. Okay, so I've got my two quotes, and I just want to come over here to the AI agent output, right, and click on this image prompt, right? So this is the prompt we're going to be dragging in as the variable, and just drag that right between those two quotes, and now we should see it populate over here in green. Okay, so now we've got our prompt coming in dynamically from whatever the user submits into Lovable, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go away, I'm going to close this out, I'm going to put my API key in off camera, and then I'm going to test it. All right, so I swapped in my API key. What I can do here, and I can run this from the canvas, I can execute that step just by hitting the play button above the node. And what it should do now is send the prompt from the agent into replicate. So let me pause and open this up. All right, so when I look at the output from replicate, I can see that we need to add one more header, because while it looks like it's good that they're sending us these kind of URLs over here, what I notice in this output field is that it's blank, and what the status says is starting. What we want is for it to say at least processing, and we want this output to include a URL. And what I did not do was add kind of a wait command in the header, so I'll show you how to set that up. So if you look inside of the API docs on replicate, you can see here that there's a header that's called prefer, and the value is wait. And what this does is the request will wait up to 60 seconds for the model to run. And this is going to help us generate the URL that we need for the next step. So we can go back into n8n. I'm just going to grab this prefer here, and let's just add another parameter under headers. So again, the name is going to be prefer. The value is going to be wait with a lowercase. I'm going to update my API key again, and then we'll run it. All right, so I added that wait header. I put my API key back in. Let's hit play or run this one specific node. So let's check what we got back. All right, now when I click into this node, I can see this is exactly what we wanted. So now remember, before in the output, there was nothing there. But now there is a URL. Even though it hasn't finished processing, it's still giving us a URL, right? So the status is processing, but we need this output URL further on in the automation. And so that's why we needed that wait value in the header, and we're going to add an actual wait step inside of n8n next. All right, so before we try to grab that finished URL, I want to give replicate a little time to actually finish generating the image. So in the playground, you can see it generated that in 10 seconds. So we're going to add a wait node here. And, just to be safe, you could probably put this at 60 seconds. So it's going to wait before we try to go to the next step. And the next step is going to be a set node, because what we have are outputs from different steps in our automation, right? The AI agent is giving us the headline, the description, right, for the text part of the ad, while the replicate node is giving us the image. And we want to kind of combine those together that we can pass back to the webhook and Lovable. So to do that, I'm going to add a set node, and the wait node is going to make me execute that node first. So let me try to do that here. All right, so it's going to rerun the HTTP request. Then we're going to wait 60 seconds, and then hopefully we'll get the value. So let me pause while this waits. All right, so you can see the wait node finished up. And if you wanted to, you could pin this HTTP request so you don't have to do it every single time. But let's open the edit fields. And again, what we want are values from the AI agent and then values from replicate. So let's go down to our AI agent, and we're going to grab the text, the headline, and the description. So let me just drag text onto here, and I'm going to rename this to text. I'm going to drag the headline next and rename that just to headline. And then finally, description, do the same thing and rename that to description. And then finally, we want our image, and we can grab it from the wait node. Now, the actual image URL is called output. It's this output field right here. And actually, let me just copy this, open a new tab, and paste it in so you can see. Okay, so that's the image URL. So let's go back into n8n. I'm going to drag this over here, and let's just rename this image underscore URL. Let's execute this step, and what we should see now is one item with those 4 fields that we want. All right, we are almost done with n8n. So we need to add another webhook on the back end. But before I forget, because I always forget, on your first webhook node, what you want to do down in respond, you want to change this from immediately to using respond to webhook node, because what we're going to do is add another webhook called respond to webhook at the end of our automation. So after edit fields, just search for webhook, and this is what we want. Returns data for the webhook. Respond to webhook. You can leave those settings as is. Now we can try to execute this step. All right, and there you can see the respond to webhook node finish up, and this is the info that it's going to be sending back, hopefully, to Lovable. So what we can do is go back into Lovable. All right, so we're ready to test again. So what I'm going to do is click on execute workflow. You can see it's waiting for you to call the test URL. Again, I'm just going to keep the same product description and click on generate kit, and let's see what happens. Now, when I click that, the benefit of running in test is that when we go into n8n, we can see everything that's happening in real time, right? We can see it go node for node. Now, when you turn this on to production and you turn this on active and you submit through Lovable, you're not able to see it live, but you can still see it in the executions, just FYI. So we're going to need to wait for the wait node again. But again, what should happen if we don't get an error, and it's definitely possible we could get an error, we have to go back and forth with Lovable. That's kind of part of the game. But what hopefully will happen is we will get this populated, right, with our primary text, our headlines, and our description coming back from n8n. So let's just give that another 10 seconds to finish, and then we'll see what happens. All right, so that finished. It responded to webhook. I honestly have not clicked into Lovable since this finished, so let's see what happens. All right, so coming into Lovable, we can see that there is now no results, which is not great. Let me just say, okay, so I submitted the request on the front end. It's sent to n8n successfully. The entire n8n automation flow finished successfully, and the respond to webhook finished successfully. But now on the front end in Lovable, all I see is a blank screen. So let me send that off, and I'm going to leave this in the final version of this video because it's important to understand that it's not just one shot and done with Lovable. There is a back and forth with the AI. There's troubleshooting. It can take a little while to get things perfectly done. So it's saying, I can see the issue. The API is returning a different data structure than what the code expects. All right, so it's saying it fixed the API response to match the actual structure returned by the webhook. So again, it's good and it's awesome that Lovable can see what's going on inside of n8n. It can see the output that it's getting. So we can just test it again. Again, there's a lot of back and forth and there's a lot of testing to be sure. So let's go back into Ridge. Let's grab this description again. Go back to Lovable. Just choose whatever down here. And again, always remember to hit execute workflow. So now it's waiting. I'm going to hit generate kit again. It's going to take a minute and a half because of our wait node, and we'll come back. Let's see if it's running. Yeah, all right, so it's running. We'll come back when the wait node is done. All right, so the automation has finished. The wait node and the webhook have finished. Let's go back into Lovable and see what we have. So I can see we've got primary text, ditch the bulk, headline, streamline your wallet, description, carry less, and keep your cards safe. Grab yours now. And we've got our Ridge wallet image generated by Flux with Replicate. All right, so that is awesome. So it was able to give us exactly what we wanted. It did take a little back and forth. Again, that's going to happen with Lovable. It's not perfect 100% out of the box, but I think this is a pretty good result for what we were trying to achieve here with Lovable and n8n. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video. And I think building these front ends with, again, whether it's Bolt or Lovable or Replit or whatever, and then tying it into an n8n automation can really unlock a lot of really cool use cases. And again, this was kind of just a basic flow. What we could have added inside of n8n was maybe a fire crawl web scraper where the user just submits the URL of the product. We have fire crawl go out and pull in all of that info about the product and pump that into the AI agent. You could do that as well. You can make this a lot more complex if you want. But what I wanted to just show you was a basic build here and how, again, whether it's Lovable or whatever AI app builder, when we combine it with n8n, I really do like the functionality and just how clean it is to have this UI on the front end. And again, if you're building this for clients, or maybe you're building it for non-technical people on your team where they just have to interact with a clean UI like this, let n8n do all of the dirty work on the back end where they don't even have to see it. I really do think this is kind of cool. So anyway, if you enjoyed this content, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment below. It really helps me out. Let me know what you want to see me build out next.